What do you think about kudzu?
Well, kudzu has one of the most beautiful flowers in the world, you know.
Never heard of it.
It grows in Alabama and Mississippi, and it's fun to play hide and go seek in, and it grows out by my house, and that's about all I know.
A vegetal form of cancer.
I kind of like it.
I think it came over from South America.
Oh, it came from India.
I never gave much thought where it came from.
Japan invades. Far eastern vines run from the clay banks they are supposed to keep from eroding. Up telephone poles which rear half out of leafage as though they would shriek, like things smothered by their own green, mindless, unkillable ghosts.
The American kudzu vine is properly pronounced Kudzu in Japanese. It is a vine belonging to the pea family and is a herbaceous climber and is a wild plant in Japan and China. And this kudzu vine was first brought into the United States in 1876 when the Philadelphia Centennial was held.
It's a plant that was brought over in Japan because it has a tremendously fecundating root system, and the soil in the south is extremely sandy, and the idea, which seemed like a good idea at the time, I suppose, on the part of government people, agriculturalists and so on, was to bring in this self-proliferating plant from Japan and plant it all over the south, where you have these highway and railroad cut banks, and to plant it there so that the root system would hold the bank. And they planted these things. You can't go anywhere without seeing it. It goes up the telephone poles, it goes over the signposts, and over fields, and even over roads. It's all over the place. They reproduce themselves so rapidly that the plant kudzu now covers the entire South.
Back a generation ago, kudzu was needed as an erosion control plant. We were in a depression, and it turned out to be the cheapest and most effective item that would grow fast enough to do the kind of a job that was necessary. Volume and amount that was planted was so large that occasionally it interfered with other crop plants or other land uses, but this was not serious in my opinion.
A resource management service is a private forestry consulting firm who manages people's timberlands, and we began a kudzu interest because some of our landowners had extensive holdings in kudzu. The kudzu, as you can see, is about 3.5 feet deep. It comes up to my waist. At one time, this area contained trees, but with the advent of the kudzu and the destruction of the trees, it becomes a field that has no contribution to make to the community. Kudzu, as far as we see it, is of no value other than keeping things green.
It fixes nitrogen, it regenerates the soil, it also carpets the ground.
A few years ago, the Dow Chemical Company developed Tordon, probably the most effective control that you can have of kudzu. The form of application is, if you're going to do it in a heavy way, you would first burn over the kudzu and then plow the land, have a distributor behind a tractor that would throw out the pellets, or you can go ahead and apply it, as we're doing now, about 50 pounds to the acre. But probably it'd take 2 years to have an effective full control.
Kudzu is still a good erosion control plant.
We might be able to secure these lands now in Kudzu into a more productive state if the government would permit the use of a tax incentive.
Jimmy Carter speaking right up here. I'd like to hear Jimmy Carter speak. Just move right on up.
Thank you very much. Will do. Excuse me, Mr. Carter.
Yes.
Do you think tax incentives should be used to control kudzu?
I don't know if you want to control kudzu or not.
You don't think you
No,
should control
let it grow. Let it
Let
grow.
it grow? Okay,
Yes.
thank
Good
you
to see
very
you.
much.
Fine.
Following the application of Tordon, it requires about 7 to 8 months before you can plant the trees or agricultural products. In a few years, they will contribute to the community in terms of income, whereas before, under the Kudzu, it contributed nothing. It was nearly a desert.
Kudzu smells nice, but it doesn't look very good.
In Georgia, the legend says that you must close your windows at night to keep it out of the house. The glass is tinged with green, even so, as the tendrils crawl over the fields. The night the kudzu has your pasture, you sleep like the dead. Silence has grown oriental.
In Japan, the Kudzu starch is very important in making Japanese sweets and medicinal tablets, while fibers from Kudzu vine were important to make paper and clothes.
I think here at the station, we see some of the better sides of it. It makes a beautiful backdrop around the patios, and it covers up our neighbors. In the springtime, you might as well be in France in a grape hall because the flowers are just beautiful, plus they have a fragrance that you just wouldn't believe, you know. We came here about 5 years ago to take this abandoned railroad station and make a restaurant and lounge out of it. We found nothing but kudzu. Taking the buildings over, it was growing in one side and then out the other. I had a call one time when I left it out there when I went on vacation. I came back a month later, it was completely engulfed in kudzu. How do you get rid of 4 acres of kudzu? They say, bring cows in. Where do you get cows in the middle of Athens, Georgia? We went the next best route and got shovels and picks and tried to dig kudzu out. You don't do it that way. So after that, we decided to wait the fall and burn it when the frost killed it.
At the merest touch of cold, the kudzu turns black, withers inward, and dies, leaving a mass of brown strings like the wires of a gigantic switchboard.
We kids always considered it just for a haven for green snakes.
Well, there's 3 things that I really hate. First is kudzu, second is city life, and third is mosquitoes. Because all of them works just about a hand in hand and making your life miserable, especially kudzu. We have some here that we only cut just a week ago, and now it's ready to be cut again. And the elderly people that has it in their yard is unable to get out. It grows so fast, harbors snakes.
Snakes love kudzu. Sometimes you can hear them out there at night singing the praises of kudzu. It's kind of a strange sound. They're singing in kind of a minor key, rather like Elizabethan music.
Long way down south in Georgia, there's a vine grove known as a kudzu vine. And once it gets started, Lord, it's sure hard to stop.
The vine is dominantly in the South now, and we play Southern music, so we kind of named ourselves after the vine because we had been around it and subjected to it for all of our lives, you know, since we were Southern Georgia boys.
What it was, we were called Beggars Opera, and our salary went up from $25 a week to $50 a week, so we were no longer beggars, you know, so we figured we had to change the name.
Well, I have this fantasy that I have, and what it is, when I'm driving on these Georgia roads, and it gets real eerie as you're looking out and you see all this kudzu. It's just growing everywhere, hanging from trees. And you kind of project yourself into the future a little ways, and all of a sudden there's nobody but kudzu. And you see the world just kind of becoming kudzu.
I'm Martha Jane Stewart Wilson. Back in the 30s, let's don't say whether it was the early 30s or the late 30s, but anyhow, in the 30s, I was the queen of kudzu of Hale County. I mean, I was a queen of this beautiful kudzu that you have already seen in the picture. And that was a thrill when you think about it, because you know how it spreads. So I've kept up with the tradition. I have spread it too. Nevertheless, I'm happy that I got this privilege of being kudzu.
Evidence of the tremendous power of life to go on, maybe senselessly, maybe divinely, beautifully, uselessly.
I think kudzu's been suffering from a bad press lately. It's got an image problem. Well, it's just like all those folks cussing Franklin D. Roosevelt. Well, kudzu did just as much as FDR did to save this section of the country, while the state of Georgia was washing down to the Atlantic Ocean before kudzu came on the scene and reached out and grabbed a hold of all that dirt and held it back. Why, look at that. It's a beautiful plant. It's got anything any other plant would have. It's green. It has a purple flower that has the wonderful aroma of new grape soda. Why, I think instead of talking about poisoning this beautiful plant, we should be thinking positively about kudzu, just like Dr. George Washington Carver did in his laboratory when he came up with all of those wonderful uses for the peanut. I think anybody is showing their lack of imagination if they can't conceive of a kudzu butter sandwich, or dry roasted kudzu, or kudzu brittle. I think we should discover the virtues of kudzu. Right now, when it hadn't been promoted properly, it's one of the best cash crops we got. Of course, you can't make any money on it, but on the other hand, you don't lose any, and that's more than you can say about any other crop since the Republicans took over the farm program. Why, I think the best thing a young fella like you could do would be to get him a bunch of acres in kudzu. Why, who knows, you might even get it put in the soil bank. Of course, then you're going to have a problem on your hands, you know, when they start paying you not to grow kudzu.
Well, it has some nice effects along the sides of the road where people throw out their trash. That's always been a problem, but here they throw it in the kudzu.
So I guess really, if you had to be a queen, it's a good thing you was a kudzu queen.
I guess the word would be funky.
Anybody that wants to have kudzu, if they come to Georgia, we'll give them free kudzu.
And the government should be interested in shipping the kudzu seed to Russia instead of our grain that the American people needs for food and clothes.
It is very interesting to see different uses of kudzu between the two continents.
It spoke of the enormously powerful ability of living things to reproduce itself and to carry on no matter what.